Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to just, talk a little bit about Avengers Infinity War. Why? Because I finally saw it. I know you're like, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. It's months later. I know. I just don't get out a lot. I'm very, very reclusive and just kind of a major shut-in, so I don't get out a lot. So I didn't go to the theaters to see it. But Michael, it's Infinity War. I know, but that's just how I am. I feel like such an idiot. I knew it was going to be a great movie and it turned out to be one anyway, but I was avoiding spoilers as much as possible. There's certain things that kind of got spoiled for me. It was like, no, that was my own fault. I'm not going to blame it. It's like, oh, the internet screwed. No, it's 100% my own fault. It's like the biggest movie ever, so of course the internet's going to run wild with it. I mean, I did very well to avoid so much of this movie, and I'm so glad because like a lot of this surprised me and got me in so many different ways. Let's break down a lot of stuff happening. For one, Loki died. Kind of saw that coming, just even from the trailers, because I was like, yeah, Loki's probably going to give over the Tesseract just because he wants Thor to live. Like, that's my interpretation of the scene, because I made a video a while back when the trailers originally dropped and talked about that. Like, I felt like that was going to be the case. Because, yeah, he flip-flops a lot, which even in this case, he kind of flip-flops a little bit, but that was mainly just to fool Thanos. Because even at one point, he's like, go ahead, kill my brother, I don't care. And even Thanos was kind of shocked by it. He starts doing it, and he's like, stop, stop, stop. Because no matter what, no matter how much of a rocky relationship they have, that's still his brother. Because the fact of the matter is too, that's the only family he has left now. Their dad's gone, their mom is gone, their sister is gone. So, but even at the end of it, Loki kind of gives the final words, and he's like, "You won't be a god." It's kind of his final words to Thanos before he kills him. Then there's a whole situation about literally. It's funny because I literally just talked about Thor Ragnarok. Like before, during the whole rewatching, I'm like, oh, what do you mean going forward for the Asgardians? I wasn't 100% sure because I hadn't watched Infinity War at that point in time, but I was like, that also determines, all comes down to what happens in Infinity War, which, yeah, literally all of them got wiped out. Literally the only one left alive is Thor, and that's crazy to me. Him meeting up with the Guardians and that being the whole thing of like, oh my god, look at him, he's so buff, and Drax being like, yeah, look at Quill, he's gotten fat. He's like, what? No, like, you can't tell me, no, I haven't gotten fat. What? Okay, I'll work on it, especially because Gamora's like feeling on him and stuff like that, because she's like impressed by, like, I guess on some level she can see everything that kind of makes, I mean, he is special too, like, being a Asgardian, his biology is very different probably from anyone else's. Also ended up finding out he's 1,500 years old. That was kind of incredible. His age has never come up before, but he goes off with Groot and Rocket, as you can, and that's kind of so sad because it's like, he's literally not only the last of his family, and I guess Heimdall was considered his best friend because it's like, oh, what happened to your best friend? It's like, oh, he kind of got stabbed through the chest. It's like, I'd assume that was Heimdall he was referencing, but it's like, oh man, that's extremely sad. He's lost all his family now. Loki was the last family he had, and now he's gone. His entire group of people are gone. So it's like, what's left? Because even the ship they were on got blown up by Thanos and his children, and it's like, what's left now, Because Rocket's like, are you sure you're ready to go forward with this? He's like, yeah, of course, like, anger, resentment, sadness, all that's going to keep me going forward, And he's like, what do I, because Rocket's like, but what if this whole thing doesn't work? He's like, it doesn't matter, like, what do I have left to lose? But then you have Rocket being like, I have a lot to lose. Like, he says that, but Thor, I don't think Thor really heard him. But it's kind of interesting because, like, you see that in Volume 2, like, how much, like, the people around him are what mattered most. And that ended up being, kind of plays out a little bit true to the end. Can we actually break it down and think about it? He's actually, I mean, I know I'm skipping around and stuff, but, like, he's the last of the Guardians, too. Like, what he was so... I didn't even think about that. That's even bigger dagger to the heart because, like, he is the last of the Guardians. Everyone else is gone, at the end, so that's even sucks because they were foreshadowing that too because he's like, I had so much to lose. And I think that was always been Rocket's greatest fear of, like, ending up alone again, like that what was around him would vanish. That was his fear too, and like even back then they foresaw to be like, yep, make it so he's the only one of the Guardians left. You have Peter, Strange, and Tony dealing with the whole go into Titan situation, also rescuing Strange. Like, this movie from top to bottom is amazing with like the fights and just how crazy and destructive things get. Also, one thing I kept wondering about too was like the Iron Spider suit, because I was like, oh, obviously it doesn't have the typical Iron Spider suit design, at least when it comes to like Ultimate Spider-Man the cartoon. That's where I kind of got my idea for it. But then it's like, no, the legs come out, they're just not there all the time, which I was wondering about that at one point in time, but it's like, no, that's what it is, they just don't come out all the time. Legitimately kind of crazy that this is probably like the saddest like movie ever when it comes to superhero stuff, which I don't mean sad in a bad way. I mean sad in a bad way in a sense of just, oh my god, it will depress you, but it's so amazing because I didn't expect it. Oh, skip it right, like the entire movie ends with Thanos winning and wiping out half the universe. Did not see that coming. Once again with the trailers, I talked about that before, like how in like Ragnarok they lie about certain things because it's like, oh, the whole Thor having two eye things, which he gets another eye thanks to Rocket. But the fact of the matter is, like, it never showed. The fact is they kept that tight nip and lip. That the fact is that Thanos actually gets all the Infinity Stones, because there's certain points in the trailer where you can look, it's like he definitely doesn't have all the Infinity Stones. Like literally during the Wakanda scene, he literally has 5 of them, but they don't show that in the trailer. So it's like, oh, they're so good and deceitful. I like that, because the entire time I'm like, he must only end up, he has to get maybe 3 in this movie. I didn't expect him to literally get all of them, snap his finger and win. I mean, that's another thing too about this movie. It kind of makes you go, you understand why Thanos is doing what he's doing. I mean, when he explains it to Gamora and everybody, I mean, he's crazy, the Mad Titan and all that, but still, like, the fact of the matter is you understand, because in his mind it's like there's not enough in this universe to go on forever. Eventually every planet will get to the point where people start starving, where they're, you know, running out of resources. Like, this universe is limited. He saw it happen on his own planet Titan. People called him mad when he talked about wiping people out, genocide. It's like, no, not in one specific, random. It's just like, this person dies, this person dies. We wipe out half the planet, because he did it to Gamora's planet, to wiped out half her people and took her. Because for him, it's not trying to discriminate or anything like that, because in his mind, that's what this has all been about. Like, it isn't, in this storyline, it's not about impressing death as something I've thrown out there before, or just trying to conquer everywhere. He doesn't even want to conquer everything. He's just trying to collect the Infinity Stones, because he's like, every world I will rest and watch the sunset, and the world will be grateful for what I did, because I ensure that every world out there in the universe exists, keeps living on, having enough resources to survive by wiping out half the universe. And I'm like, dude, once again, madman, but at the same time you understand on some level where he's coming from with it. Doesn't mean it's okay or good. Some things I thought were fascinating, like the fact is the entire movie, like, Banner doesn't go Hulk ever since Thanos beat him. I honestly want to say it's because Hulk was scared. I honestly want to say that has to be the case, because every time he tries to go Hulk, like, Hulk says no, that's never happened before. He literally always has to try to control himself to get Hulk not to come out. And then the one time he wants Hulk to come out, he doesn't want to. I honestly have to interpret that as like Hulk was scared because he's never been that outmatched before. People have been even with him. He comes out the victor, sure, in some occasions, but he's never been that outmatched when it came to raw strength. Even I was surprised. I was like, holy shit. Turns out he also has the Infinity Stone from Kandor. Apparently, he wiped it out off screen, just like he did all the Asgardians, so that was kind of interesting. Something I brought up before too, it's like, we're not circling back to the fact is that the one of the other Infinity Stones is on nowhere. It's like, no, we did. Thanos found it and like put up this like mirage because he got the Reality Stone. Because I was wondering about that Gamora scene. It's so interesting. They tried so hard to stop Drax, which I expected him to have the reaction he did. But for Gamora to go off like she did, because she thought this was her chance, she actually felt sad when she killed him. Because no matter how twisted things are, he was the closest thing she's had to a father for a good chunk of her life. The man who kidnapped her, brought her in, kind of forced her and her siblings to fight and stuff like that. But what he's able to do with the Reality Stone is crazy, like breaking Drax into pieces like that, making Mantis kind of like turn into, like, I don't know what kind of material you would call that. One by one, kind of utilizing the power of the stones and everything. You have Wanda and Vision's whole situation of like, Vision's like, you have to kill me, which she doesn't want to do, especially because for them, it's like in between this and Civil War, they've been trying to live their lives as regular as possible for the past 2 years, which it has been 2 years. Once again, like, I guess every movie, once again, I have to say this again, I guess every movie takes place at a different point in time that I just never realized, you know? like I said, and I've talked about this in a rewatch, if you've never come across that before, that's just not my thought. Like, a lot of movies don't take place in a particular order you think they do. Like, the timeline for the MCU, in my opinion, especially with stuff like this, kind of goes like, okay, so it's definitely all over the place. Because, like, I talked about this before, how, like, Civil War takes place literally like, Black Panther took place literally a week after the events of Civil War, so that type of situation. They were trying to sneak time in between, and it's like maybe I don't have to, you know, maybe we don't have to say goodbye. It's like they try to sneak in a little time here and there, but it's like maybe we just stay together this time. And that kind of got interrupted. Luckily, Vision was saved in the end. And then they take them to Shuri, who's trying to like remove the... I love that her breaking it down for Banner, like, oh, why didn't you guys do this? He's like, well, because we didn't think of that. She's like, yeah, you guys tried to do the best you could. Like I said, I thought so too. I was like, yeah, Shuri's got to be literally the smartest person. And people had talked about Hulk being the one inside of the Hulk Buster, which I had thought, you know, when the trailers originally dropped, it was like, oh, the way it moves, that looks like Hulk. No, turns out it's I mean, technically it's true because it's Banner in there, but not the Hulk. Like I said, was not expecting. He literally transformed one time, and that was him fighting against Thanos, but that was it. Which Banner and Natasha meet again after all these years, and then just like you have Sam be like, oh, this is awkward. It's just weird because they're just, he's like, yeah, I'm back. And just like, oh, who's Scott? And when he's like, oh, who's Scott? Ant-Man. Wait a minute. There's a Spider-Man and an Ant-Man? It's like, dude, a lot. Because even Tony had to break it down. It's like, oh yeah, the Avengers broke up. He's like, wait, what? What, you mean like a boy band? Like the Beatles or something? Which is like, yeah, you've been going a long time, dude. You and Thor. So then the whole Thor situation of him making his hammer again, that's, well, not hammer, axe. Also did not know that Peter Dinklage was in this movie. That kind of took me by surprise, him being the last of his kind. I was always also wondering about the whole gauntlet thing. I was like, was that just like an easier way to hold the Infinity Stones? It's like, no, it's much like Roman, how, because I thought about that too, because like when I was rewatching Guardians, I was like, could Roman just not just handle it? He had to put it in his weapon. So I was like, oh, I never realized the Infinity Gauntlet really is something where it's like, no, like Thanos needs it. It's the only means of handling all of the Infinity Stones, because it would definitely, even as strong as he is, it would be too much even for him to handle. So the Gauntlet kind of makes it manageable for him to kind of control them and utilize them in whatever fashion he needs to. But when Thor is making his axe, like holding open that thing so that the star could burn through, he was burning his own body doing it, was crazy. Also, him and Rocket working together to jumpstart everything so that the Forge could be started again, that was incredible. Like throwing the ship rockets on and then flinging it and then using himself and his, like, the thrusters from that and his momentum to kind of push it, to kind of activate again, that was insane. That and Groot finally kind of like not playing his game for the first time, making the handle of the axe and then slicing his own arm off. I had no idea that was the handle to the axe. I was like, that's super cool. And when he actually showed up on the battlefield going all beastly like that, that's amazing. Just kind of coming down, striking, and it's just like, oh, him and Steve look at it, he's like, oh, I like what you did with your hair. He's like, oh, I love that you're doing the whole beard thing like I did, and kind of copying me. Which that fight at Wakanda was crazy. M'Baku, as well as other, you know, tribes coming together for Wakanda. Yeah, Banner screwing around in the Hulk Buster, kind of not being able to control it. He's like, yeah, so this is what it feels like to be the Hulk without being the Hulk. And taking down the children of Thanos, like I love when Scarlet Witch finally gets on the battlefield and she stops those gigantic weapons all like, and then sends them down to kill the other and like adds on the battlefield. And then Okoye's like, we had her just chilling up there. She should have been out here in the battlefield kicking ass. But all three, Okoye, Scarlet Witch, and Black Widow kind of deal with that late. Like they kind of tried to let her off easy last time because like Black Widow was like, yo, don't fight us. Like we'll let you. We don't want to have to kill you essentially. So we're kind of letting you live this time. It's like, yep. Scarlet Witch ended up finishing her by throwing her in one of the things. She just kind of sliced and diced. So Thanos' children have kind of been taken care of. I mean, they're technically considered his children. I don't know if that really applies in the comic book. I mean, it might be other kids that he brought up along the way where it's like, oh yeah, like, much like Gamora, he chose them kind of amongst their species, potentially, I don't know. It's actually interesting because this is our first time ever getting a look at the other siblings because Nebula has talked about them in the past, which her situation, holy crap. So in between Guardians 2 and this, she at some point in time tried to sneak aboard, but almost came close to killing Thanos, but he got her first. kind of like breaking her, pulling her body apart like that. It's horrible. Forcing Gamora to tell him where the final stone is. And then the whole thing with her and Peter, where she's like, if he ever gets his hands on me, kill me. Which Peter was reluctant to pull the trigger, but when it came down to it, because she had asked him, because he promised, he swore on his mom, and when he tried to, it didn't work. Side note, just kind of balance the seriousness of it. I do want to also talk about the fact is that he tried to like sadness Thor, because it's like, oh man, your brother died and everything. It's like, well, you know, you had to kill your sister. It's like, well, you know, I mean, I actually had to kill my dad, you know, because he killed my mom and everything, trying to do him and like, oh, how shitty things are for them. Even the whole trying to make his voice deeper is like, oh, there you go again, trying to make your voice deeper. He's like, what are you guys talking about? This is exactly how you always talk. I love it. But Thanos sacrificing Gamora for the Soul Stone, did not expect that. Threw her off the cliff. She tried to kill herself before even, but she couldn't do it fast enough before he ended up catching her. Like, in his own twisted way, he loves her, because he talks about the fact is he put his destiny on hold one time before, but he couldn't afford to do it now, so which is like, yeah, in his own twisted way, he actually did love her. I mean, he took you away from your people and raised you as one of his own and everything, so, which kind of sets Peter off later on when he finds out that Gamora is dead, because it's just kind of, it's just heartbreaking all around. I didn't expect him to kind of be able to finagle that whole situation. Like, if Peter hadn't gone off like he did, makes you wonder what things have played out differently, because they were close to getting the gauntlet off. But to be fair, later on, Strange says the fact of the matter is, this is the best way, because he looked at all the different possibilities and the futures, but he was like, there's only one of them where they stayed alive, and I guess this was like, he said that it was for the best. So whatever it is that he saw, this is the best option currently, which is rough to think about. I wasn't expecting the one to end up finally wounding him. Coming close to killing him would be Thor. Thor came down with that hammer. Even with the Infinity Stone's powers, like, Thor still threw his axe and it cut through that beam, stabbed him right in the chest. And he's like, you should have went for the hand. And he was able to finally snap. In turn, wiped out half the universe. It didn't go down the way I thought it would. I thought it would have been kind of like an immediate, like, oh, half the universe is going, especially because it went to white, and it cuts back and I'm like, okay, what the hell happened? But then slowly but surely everyone starts turning to like ash and dust and fading away. I'm like, dude, like, I didn't expect it to be such a slow, I thought it'd be like immediately everyone's back and just like half the people, it's like, no, it's a slow, like, dissipating, like disappearing and no longer existing. It happens to, like, a lot of people die. Groot, Peter, both Peters, Peter Parker, as well as Quill, you know, Drax, Mantis, Strange, T'Challa. I did not see that coming. Sam, Bucky, oh dude, especially because Bucky just got put back into the fight too, and it's like everyone knew that this was kind of the fight for everything. It's also interesting because they brought like the whole aspect of like, yeah, you guys are wanted and stuff like that. It's like literally a battle for the universe is coming here, and you still stuck on some BS like that. Like Secretary Ross, he's still telling Rhodey to arrest him. I love that moment too when Rhodey was kind of, I know I span all over the place, I do apologize, when Rhodey was telling Banner, it's like, oh yeah, do we bow? It's like, yeah, he's a king and he bows, and like T'Challa's like, no, we don't do that here. And he turned, then Banner turns to Rhodey, and Rhodey's just kind of laughing at him about it. Especially that heartbreaking moment where Scarlet Witch tries her best. She kills the man that she loves just for the sake to make sure that he doesn't get the Infinity, just to make sure that the final stone doesn't fall into Thanos' hands. And he's like, oh, I understand why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, he's like, he even pets her a little bit. I was almost like, are you about to make her your new Gamora or something like that? But then he activates the time stone and reverses it and steals the stone and kills Vision anyway. I was like, oh man, how, it didn't even cross my mind. I think, right, you have the time stone, oh. But it's also interesting too, when it's all said and done, the gauntlet is destroyed. Someone would have to forge another gauntlet for anyone to be able to utilize those stones. Like, I don't think they're completely broken. I think it's just the gauntlet, like, shattered from using it once to wipe everything out. I mean, I'd assume the only way to fix all of this is to undo it with the Infinity Stones. Then at the very end, we have Fury popping up with heels, and it's just kind of like she's disappearing and he's trying to send out a message, and then it's just kind of like, oh crap, he's disappearing too. It's like, wow, you popped up for a little bit just to die. That's interesting. For one, I did not know he was going to pop up. Once again, it always surprises me. He literally keeps popping up in the MCU. Like, once again, if you haven't seen my rewatch, I did not realize he literally popped up in Avengers 2. I had completely forgotten about it. The last time I thought he popped up was at the end of Winter Soldier. I thought that was the last time we heard hide nor hair of him, but it's like, nope, he popped up in Age of Ultron, and I completely forgotten about that. And then the symbol you see at the end is obviously Captain Marvel, which then begs the question, wait, why do you have Captain Marvel on like speed? Once again, we do know that Captain Marvel's movies takes place in the 90s, so amongst all of this is like, that's the next one to come out in 2019, right? I could have sworn I saw something talk about the fact that Avengers 4 might come out sooner than it was originally supposed to, or at least its release date was going to change. I don't know like how true that is. Like I said, it was just something I glanced at. It was like the title of like an article or something. I didn't really read too much into it. Nevertheless, so that's very interesting. I guess you can make the argument that Tony's vision came true in the end. The vision he had in Age of Ultron. He was kind of the only one standing above everyone he cared about dying. It's like visions are popping up all over the place because Thor had his, and that led to Ragnarok, which happened. And the same thing, Tony's fears kind of came true. Which is interesting because this is the day he's been waiting for, like why he's so anxious about everything, because it's like he's been waiting for this moment ever since the Chitauri attack in Avengers. And now it's like, well, here we are. Like the only ones left on Titan are him and Nebula. And everyone else in Wakanda's like looking upon like what the hell is going on, while like half the Earth and half the universe is going just like that. I mean, because the only like active people we know in the universe out there in space were the Guardians. But even though at every point in turn, like I haven't talked about it, but it's like at every point in turn they were outmatched by Thanos, did they not put up a good fight? Everyone on Titan putting up a good fight. Like he kind of like knocked everyone in Wakanda back like it was not me. At that point in time, he had literally 5 of the Infinity Stones. Like because I guess he didn't feel like bothering, because it's like at any point in time he could have just easily killed all of them, but he never bothered. But like everyone on Titan gave him a run for his money, like all the tactics they were using the magic to kind of pop in and out. Doctor Strange doing his thing, going one-on-one with him. Then Tony doing it too. Tony going hard, dude, until like the nano suit around him is getting destroyed. He's getting stabbed, you know, by his own tech. The whole him and Pepper situation. I guess they haven't officially gotten married in that time between this and Homecoming, which I guess it hasn't been that long amount of time. Like I said, the MCU timetable is kind of a little weird, but making a promise that he was, you know, gonna, you know, not let things kind of like this get in the way, and then immediately Strange popped up, was like, yo, dude, universe is in trouble, need your help. Like I said, I'm still sitting here shocked and awe at the way, literally the final scene of it is Thanos smiling. Did not see that coming. Didn't expect him to win. Even the final thing at the end of the movie is Thanos will return. I think I heard people talk about it before, about this not being an Avengers movie, this being more so a Thanos movie. This is all about him. He's kind of like, you know, everyone's the hero of their own story, especially in Thanos' eyes, because it's like, even if people villainize me, like I'm doing what's right for the greater good, even if it is this mass universal genocide, you know, it's crazy. It's also interesting too, little side note, that one of his children, the dude that was using the needles and stuff like that, he's like, oh, this is all for surgical purposes or something like that, which is like, huh, it's interesting that you would do that to, you know, someone that is considered a surgeon, you know, find it fascinating. I say considered a surgeon considering the fact that he's technically not one anymore. I mean, I guess his skills are still there, but it's still like, no, you're more the Sorcerer Supreme, you know, in this regard. So, but like I said, this was such a one-sided fight. Like, I mean, what do you go from here? I mean, like I said, Thanos has no intentions of ruling anything. It's just kind of like a, yeah, it's like, and I'm sure people got what they wanted, because people were like, yeah, I better, like, you know, some consequences. Some people better die in this movie. And it's like, yeah, a lot of people die. A lot of heroes die. Whether they would have just been killed naturally or just, you know, because it's like, I guess for a lot of people, it's never really been a big thing amongst the heroes dying. That has never really happened before this movie. So this movie really pushed that forward of like, yeah. So once again, the question going forward is like, where do we go from here? What does this all mean going forward for the MCU? Obviously, the next movie was like, you know, Ant-Man and the Wasp, which I haven't seen yet, and most likely probably won't see until it leaves theaters, just because I don't get out that much. So, but also like what Captain Marvel means, what the whole Avengers 4 situation is going to be, whatever that means going forward too. What that name specifically is. I think even at this point in time, Avengers 4 doesn't have an official title yet. I don't think. I could be 100% wrong on that. So it is kind of interesting that the two pillars to the MCU, that being like Cap and Tony, are still alive. I wasn't expecting that. I was kind of fairly certain that both of them in fact would be dead. I had to, like, two of the people I figured would die in this movie died. That being Vision and Loki. I pretty much figured as much, but was actually, like, I was wrong on the other two, that being like Cap and Iron Man, and Tony, which is interesting too. He knew who Tony was. It was like, Stark, he's like, you know me? It's like, you're not the only one plagued with knowledge. It's like, what the hell does that mean exactly? Because I'm almost forgetting entirely the freaking Red Skull situation. Like, once again, another thing, like, I was rewatching that the first Avenger Captain America movie. Like, I rewatched that and I was like, and I talked about it too. I was like, wait a minute, what? Isn't the Red Skull still alive? Because him at the end, I was like, that's him teleporting away. That's not him getting eviscerated and dying. He's still alive. Turns out that is the case. Wasn't expecting it in any shape or form to come out the way it did. Because when that black cloak figure came to Thanos and Gamora, I was like, oh, is that supposed to be death? Or is them introducing death or something? Is she going to be like a guy in this version or something like that? Which, once again, I'm still curious. Are they ever planning on introducing her into the MCU or not, or whether that might stay with the whole Fox situation, which also that's something that has to be considered going forward, like whether or not that completely goes through or not. So, but like, for him to be there where the Soul Stone is and know what he knows, it's kind of crazy, considering the fact is the last time we saw him, he was kind of a maniacal, like, madman, much like Thanos. It's kind of crazy that, like, they would meet under those circumstances. So I guess at some point in time, like when he touched the Tesseract and that Infinity Stone, it just kind of set him there, and what exactly happened to him at that time we still don't know. But it's kind of interesting that he would be the one there. It's like, oh, I tried to use the Infinity Stones for my own, well, at least one in particular, and now I ended up here. And he's kind of like, seems like he's not like the madman that he once was, which is interesting. Maybe that time in isolation kind of, or like I said, whatever happened in that time frame changed him. So now I know I'm not talking about everything that went down, but still, like, this movie was phenomenal. I knew it was going to be anyway, but I got giddy finally watching it, and it's like, honestly, even though I should have watched it sooner, I still think it was like well worth the wait. And actually, I think it worked out for me because I was doing this whole MCU rewatch thing. It worked out for me because a lot of stuff going forward, I'm like, oh man, this and that. Like, White Cap doesn't have a shield. I completely forgotten about the fact that he threw it down at the end of Civil War. The whole Red Skull situation, it's like, right, he's not dead. He got teleported away type of thing. So it's like, there's so many pieces I definitely would have forgotten about coming into this. And I feel like I appreciate it even more, because that'd be like coming into this situation not knowing anything. Like, I've seen all these movies already, but it'd been such a long time, especially when it came to the earlier things. So it's interesting to kind of see it kind of all kind of come together in some shape or form. I'm sure even after having rewatched it, there's plenty of things I've seen online that kind of hint to, like, oh yeah, there's stuff in the earlier parts of the MCU that kind of reference what's going down currently. Like, there's a lot of foreshadowing stuff, you know, ahead of time, which I've kind of talked a little bit about some things, but nevertheless, honestly, that's really all I'm going to talk about. Just kind of running my mouth off about all of this. But to the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it, good day, and goodbye.